Hey guys, welcome back. It's Brad, the Probate House guy. So today I'm going to share a little story about a probate deal that we just closed. Seems like all of them have some sort of drama or baggage associated. So this is like, I guess, another episode of probate stories, as we call them. So this particular deal was a lead that we received from our, I have a foreclosure specific Carrot website. Me and my real estate attorney sort of partnered up and we created a bunch of foreclosure specific content related to all the questions that someone might ask when they're going through foreclosure in Georgia. It's specific to Georgia. And we basically are offering the seller either a free 30-minute legal consultation with my partner and attorney, Josh, because he's an attorney and he can provide legal advice. I can't do that. I'm not an attorney. Or we can go down the route of either listing their house for them or buying their house. So we kind of have like three different avenues they can go down. Or if they talk to Josh first, we can kind of send them back into my funnel, which would either be buying the house for cash or listing it as an agent, because I'm an agent and I'm an investor too. So I can kind of play both of those cards. So either way, we built this foreclosure specific website. We took a Carrot website and we actually kind of stripped out everything except for the foreclosure related content, created the blog, obviously did all these videos, turned them into blogs, that sort of thing, to generate foreclosure specific leads. And then I'm also running some Google ads to that specific site as well, in order to, generate traffic. It's a very low traffic website because despite what you might read on the news, I guess foreclosures are like a little bit higher than they used to be, but honestly, they're still like extremely, extremely low. But either way, this lead came in from that website, and the lead actually came in from a lady who was basically calling on behalf of her daughters. Her ex-husband, the father of their children, had passed away, and the daughters were living in the house, the husband's house. The mom and the dad had been divorced for, probably 30 years. They got divorced when the girls were little. The girls are in their mid-40s now. At two sisters, and they were living in this house. I think dad died like 4 or 5 years ago, I want to say. Anyways, the house was in foreclosure and they were kind of up against the wall. And, obviously people don't share a lot of stuff with you right off the bat, but as we got to probing and asking more questions and whatever, and the fact that the mother called us, we kind of learned that you kind of had two sisters. One was kind of irresponsible, to put it lightly, and the other one was pretty responsible and had her stuff together, and had a job and da-da-da-da. Well, anyways, the house was in foreclosure and it was going up to auction in like 3 weeks. And apparently we learned that there was this uncle, this rich uncle in the family, who was kind of like the savior of the family, and he had bailed the one sister out multiple times on this house. And he was a rich uncle, gotten to know the guy, super nice guy, super cool guy. He's a real estate entrepreneur, owns a lot of rental properties. Very sizable portfolio of rental properties that he and his wife self-manage. But as happens many times in real estate, sometimes you are real estate rich and cash poor. Happens to me, happens to the best of us. Sometimes your liquidity gets a little low because of various other projects and various things, but you have a lot of real estate that you own and you got a lot of equity in said real estate, and your net worth is high, but your liquidity is low. So he was unable to purchase this house and kind of bailed them out. He had given them some money and caught up the mortgage payment multiple times. Apparently, this wasn't the first time that this thing had gotten behind. And ironically, the payment on this house was actually very low, much, much, much lower than what you would pay in rent. But either way, somehow the irresponsible sister was put in charge of paying the mortgage on this house, which, surprise, surprise, she didn't pay that multiple times. And the house got behind, and also it got behind in, deferred maintenance, and it needed a lot of maintenance. The roof was leaking. This particular house, very familiar with the area. It's right over where the middle school that I went when I was a kid, like almost right across the street from the middle school that I went to. So I'm very familiar with that area, very familiar with that neighborhood. I think I had a buddy in high school that lived in that specific neighborhood, if I recall correctly, or the next street over. Either way, these houses were kind of all built in the early 1980s. So not that old of a house in the big scheme of things, I guess. Well, I guess they're 40 some odd years old, but it's kind of hard, it's crazy to think about, right? So anyways, deferred maintenance, needed the decks replaced, needed a new roof. There was some siding that was damaged. There were some landscaping issues, obviously water damage inside from the roof leaking. You had, old nasty carpet and it needed a paint job and all the fixtures were, you name it, right? That basically our rehab estimate on this thing came out to, I want to say it was like $80,000 to $90,000, if I recall correctly. It was a pretty extensive, rehab in terms of, because we needed a roof, and needed HVAC, so it needed a roof. Boom, that's that roof's probably an $8,000 roof in today's dollars. And need a new HVAC. Boom, there's another $8,000 right there. So just between those two, you got $16,000. Needed new decks, front and back decks. Combine all those together, you're looking at probably about $7,000 to $8,000 to replace these decks, because it was a split level house, so they're kind of higher off the ground. So you got to build the staircases. That's $1,000 a pop for each staircase. Plus the decks, the framing, the labor, siding repair. There were some windows, just on the outside. I mean, I think we were at like $30,000 just on the exterior of the house, not even getting on the inside. And then nowadays, my interior cosmetic rehabs are $30,000, $40,000 in the big scheme of things once you're replacing all the stuff. Plus, this house was a little too far gone where you couldn't really just put lipstick on a pig. You kind of had to fix a bunch of stuff, and by the time you're fixing all that, you might as well just kind of rehab the whole thing. So you end up doing a pretty significant amount of work. That's also called a can of worms house. I've said that before, but either way, so they reach out to us. And we schedule an appointment. When the lead came in, I was actually on vacation at the beach. And a few months ago, I let my acquisitions person go, and I've been kind of filling in the acquisitions role in the meantime. And obviously, me being at the beach on vacation, I couldn't go to this house. But it was a hot lead, so we figured it out. And I said, okay, why don't we do this? I sent my assistant, Karen, my admin assistant. I said, hey, Karen, can you go over to the house and maybe just take pictures of it and give me a call when you're there? That way I can kind of real time walk you through what I need you to look at. That way she can put eyes on it. So she said, sure, no problem. I can go over there tomorrow. So we tell the mom, we say, look, okay, we can get over there tomorrow morning. Is that okay? And she said, sure, no problem. Let me call my daughter. Just let her know you're coming. So she reaches out to the daughter, texts us back, and daughter says, okay, cool. See you in the morning or whatever. So fine, cool. We got an appointment the next morning, I think at like 10 o'clock or something. So Karen goes over the next day and she texts at like, 10 o'clock. Nobody's here. Tried to knock. No one's answering. What's the deal, right? Nobody's here. There's no cars in the driveway, because the other sister, they were both living in the house. The other sister had gone to work. She was working. She works in healthcare. And she was at work, works, long hours in healthcare and wouldn't be home till later in the day and really not in the availability to take a phone call. So Karen waits and she waits and she waits and don't hear anything back after there for an hour. She finally leaves. She takes some pictures in the window, the ones that she could snap in the windows, takes the exterior pictures, and she leaves. And we called the mom back and we're like, hey, we couldn't get in the house. So-and-so wasn't there, even though she had told us just yesterday afternoon at 5 o'clock, she'd be there tomorrow morning, and she wasn't there. So we couldn't get in the house. We're going to need to get back over the house. And we told her, look, time is of the essence here. We need to get in the house. I'm going to go ahead and send you an offer, but this is my worst case scenario offer based on what I've seen on the outside and peeking in some of the windows. I'm going to assume that my inside is this. And we said, hey, we'll make you this offer, but in reality, this offer might actually come down a little bit, or might go up a little bit because our rehab budget, we may have overestimated because we couldn't see the inside of the house. But I said, it's important that we get this under contract ASAP because we're, at this point, 2.5, 3 weeks away from the auction date. We got to move, guys. We got to move. You can't be dicking around on this thing. Foreclosure is ticking. Time is ticking, right? So we call them, we make the offer, and talk to the sisters. We find out that the one irresponsible sister, her and her friend, decided on a whim in the middle of the night that they were going to drive out of state. I'm not going to say where they went, but it was about 6 hours away, or actually 8 hours away. And they got in an accident on the way there, pretty serious accident, and they were both in the hospital. Car was totaled, bad accident on the interstate, and they were in the hospital in, multiple states away. And so now the mom and her husband, their stepdad, who had been their stepdad for 25 years or something like that, were like, okay, we're going to have to fly down there or drive down there and go pick her up because A, her car's totaled. There's no way for her to get back. And then B, somebody needs to be there with her at the hospital. So she calls us to tell us this. We're like, oh, well, that explains why she wasn't there. I hope she's okay. She ends up being in the hospital for like a week before she finally got out. So we present the offer. We say, we call her back, like, look, I understand she's hurt. We called the other sister, made her the offer. She was okay with the offer. We talked to the mom. Mom was okay with the offer. And then she was trying to talk to her daughter, and her daughter's like, well, I want, my uncle to approve it, because she basically trusts her uncle's judgment on these things. So that's when uncle got involved in the situation. And so we call uncle, and he was a little kind of standoffish at first, and he kind of puts up a little bit of a wall, and you kind of have to break through. Once we've broken through that wall, he's actually a very nice guy. We share a lot of commonalities. He's a car guy. I'm a car guy. We were at closing. We were talking about, cars and racing and all these things. And turns out he's a really cool guy. And we got into real estate, and I was helping him. Me and my attorney were helping him with some real estate challenges he had. And he was like, oh my God, you guys are great. Like, thank you so much. I never would have thought about that. So anyways, we were helping him out, blah, 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 blah. So, but at first he kind of put up a wall, and we needed to get this by him. So we present the offer to him, and he's like, well, I could buy this place and and I was going to buy it for X, but I don't have the cash, the liquidity available to buy it for cash right now. I'd have to go get a loan, and that's going to take some. He said, I don't know if I have enough time to go get a loan. And honestly, I don't know if I really want this house. I don't really want any more rental properties. I have enough to deal with. I'm kind of semi-retired now or whatever. So anyways, we go through that thing, and then we're like, look, so-and-so, I'm not going to mention his name, but like, we really need a decision. We'll give you till tomorrow to think about it. But like, I need to know like ASAP, because if we're going to get this, we got to get this thing moving. Like, I got to get my attorney. We got to do title search. We got to get payoffs. We got to reach out to the foreclosure attorney. There's a lot of things we got to do to get this ball rolling, right? So he says, okay, finally, he accepts the offer from us. And then, we find out that dad had died in this process. And luckily, because dad had passed away more than 3 years ago, and there were only the two daughters and there was no will, in the state of Georgia, you can do what's called an affidavit of descent if there was no will. And the heirs at law are all on board with selling this property, and you're essentially the assets are kind of limited to just the property and maybe like some money in a bank account or something. You can kind of bypass probate. So my attorney's like, I sent it to my attorney. I sent him all the details. He looked over everything. He did a kind of a quick title search, and he said, yeah, we can do an affidavit of descent on this. We're not going to have to do a probate. Cool, because we didn't have time to do a probate, right? Time's a ticking. Foreclosure is going to happen here in the next couple weeks, 2 or 3. I think it was like 2.5 weeks at that point, right? So he goes and we start the process. We send out a contract to both of the sisters. The one sister signs it, DocuSign immediately. The other one, we had to send it to the mom, and she had to. We called her and went over it with her. She was in the hospital room, and we were going through it in the hospital, and she agreed and signed everything in the hospital. So we went over the contract with mom, stepdad, and the daughter in the hospital, and she signed it in the hospital and sent it back to us via DocuSign. So we're good there. We got signatures. Let's go. Game on, right? So we start getting everything going, right? We start to do the title search, and during the title search, when you do an affidavit of descent, the property conveys to all of the heirs at law. So in this case, it's conveying to both of the sisters individually. It's not necessarily conveying, the money's not conveying to an estate. The money's being split amongst all the heirs at law according to whatever Georgia law says the split might be. So in this case, we said, okay, well, both sisters, we're going to need quitclaim deeds from you, and you're both going to have to sign a deed of assent. And then we need actually uncle, because he knew this was his brother. We knew, he's known obviously his brother for a long time, and he's a disinterested third party. He's not getting any money from this transaction. So he needs to also sign this affidavit of descent as well, confirming that he's known him more than X amount of time. It's kind of like an heirship affidavit in some other states. So everybody's cool with that. So we start doing the title search. Well, guess what? The irresponsible sister, when they do a title search on her personally, there were 2 judgments that had been recorded against her person. And they, one was pretty sizable, one was small. One was a small medical bill for like less than $1,000. And the other one was a very large $18,000 bill from a car that she had bought, and it got repossessed like 10 years ago. And there was a deficiency judgment against that car. They repossessed it, sold it at auction, and it sold for less money than what was owed on it. So there was a deficiency. So the bank filed a judgment against her, got awarded a judgment for that amount. I don't remember what the original amount. I think it was like 10 grand or something. So over time, over the past 10 years, between attorneys' fees and penalties and interest and stuff, it had ballooned up to $18,000. I think it was like $17,900 or something. So almost like 18 grand had accumulated over time. So like, crap. Okay, so we need to call her. And so we call her. She's in the hospital, and we're like, hey, this judgment lien came up against you. And we're like, what do you mean? There's no liens on this property. It's like, no. There's no liens on the property other than the mortgage that's behind, which, by the way, they didn't owe much on the mortgage. I think they only owed like 40 grand on the mortgage. There wasn't much left on the mortgage. Dad had owned this house for a long time. Anyways, they were like, there's a judgment against you. She said, oh yeah, that's for that car. I owe them that money. And then it turns out that basically she has been working like kind of side jobs, doing sort of little, call it DoorDash kind of type stuff for the last number of years, because if she got a normal real job, they would garnish her wages and try to pay this judgment. So she was trying to kind of avoid that. We also found out that she had not filed tax returns in many, many years, because again, she was afraid that her tax return was going to get garnished if she was due a refund, and that they would take that money and use it to pay this judgment. Rightfully so, right? That's why people get judgments against them. So anyways, we're like, my attorney said, well, hey, you're coming into this money from the sale of this asset, and because I'm conveying 50% of the proceeds of this to you, we have to pay these 2 judgments. Like, we cannot ignore them. These must be paid. And she was like, well, I don't want to pay it. And this was like a week before closing now. She's like, I'm not paying that. And it's like, well, then this house is going to go into foreclosure. And while it could sell for more than what we offered you, it may not. And there may be a deficiency judgment. And either way, and also we said, if this does go to foreclosure, in order for you to claim those excess funds from the state, like let's say it does sell for more at auction than what's owed on it, there would be what's considered excess funds in Georgia, and the estate would be entitled to those excess funds, and they can claim that money. But the problem is that the estate has to claim that money. So we said, you're going to have to file a probate, and it's going to cost you a few $1,000s to file a probate and go through this probate process. You could do it yourself, but this was kind of complicated. Dad owned some other, or there were some other complications with it. And so really an attorney really needed to do this. So we said, okay, well, you're going to have to file a probate in order to claim those excess funds. So that's going to cost you more money. It's going to take you a few months before you can even claim any of that money, because you're going to have to go through probate and all that. And then go through once you've gone through probate, then you're going to have to go through the process of claiming those excess funds. And that's going to take longer. So it could be months before you see any of that money. And the one sister, the responsible one, kind of really needed the money. She could have really used that money. She had some other stuff she was planning on doing in life and some things to pay for and that sort of stuff. And so anyways, the one sister was like, the responsible one was like, I mean, I could kind of use this money or whatever. And again, it was just the two of them that were getting the money. And the irresponsible was like, I'm not paying it. And we had to like kind of have that conversation. It's like, you're kind of, if you don't go through with a sale, you're kind of screwing your sister here. What the heck? And it's like, by the way, after it was all said and done, by the time, the mortgage was paid off after closing, the amount of funds that they were going to receive, they were each going to get about $35,000 a piece after the mortgage was paid off and everything was covered. So they were each, it was like $70,000 in total proceeds, and it was going to be split 50-50 amongst them. So we're like, well, you're going to get $35,000 and you owe 18 and some change between these two judgments. That means you're still going to have money left over after it's all said and done. And we even reiterated to her, it's like, look, once this is paid off, you can literally like have this wiped off your record, and you don't have to worry about your wages getting garnished or your tax returns getting garnished. Like, you could get a normal W-2 job again, and you could, file tax returns again and all that stuff. And you're probably owed a tax refund from all these years you haven't filed taxes, because most people like are overpaying in their taxes and they get a big tax refund every year. So it's like, why wouldn't you just pay this off? So then she's like, no, I'm not going to do it. And then she's like, well, what if I just give all the money to my sister? And my attorney's like, I mean, you can, but we still can't ignore this debt. Like, then the creditor's going to come after me and you for trying to circumvent this whole thing. He's like, I can't do that. So you really don't have a choice here, but you're going to have to pay it. And then my attorney's like, well, why don't I do this? Why don't I offer to negotiate this debt down? So we reached out to this collection agency, because it had been turned over to collections a long time ago. And the collection agency's like, yeah, no, you need to pay 100% of it. And he made him an offer of like 50%, or maybe it was even less than that. He said, there's this real estate closing, and they're like, well, you're coming into all this money. We need to see a copy of the settlement statement so we know how much money she's getting before we'll agree to any settlement. So they're trying to playing their cards close to their chest, right? So he's like, no, I'm not sending you any settlement statement. Like, I'm making you an offer right now. Will you accept it? If you will, we'll wire you the money. And at this point, we were like literally a day away from closing. This was like the day before closing. And they're like, no, we're not going to take it. So then last minute, we're like, okay, we presented it to the irresponsible sister. Like, hey, you got to pay the 18 grand or like nothing's going to happen, or it's going to go into foreclosure. So at this point, we're like, literally the day of closing here, that morning, we're all in the office. We're ready to close. Money's wired into the account, everything ready to close on this deal. And so then we have to get on the phone. Me and Josh get on the phone with a foreclosure attorney that was handling the foreclosure for this bank. It was like a credit union, small credit union, local credit union that was foreclosing on this loan. So they had hired a local small attorney. Some of these big banks hire these big foreclosure mill kind of operations that are very difficult to deal with. This was kind of a small town guy. So we call, he answers the phone. Like, we don't even get like a secretary. Like, he picks up the phone when we call. And Josh is chatting with him and doing their talking attorney speak. And he's like, look, we're trying to do this closing. And we've got this dilemma. And we explain the situation. He's like, why doesn't she just pay? She's getting 35 grand. Why doesn't she just pay the debt and be done with it? Like, I don't understand why she's trying to avoid this when she owes this debt and she's got a judgment filed against her, and she could have contested it years ago, but she didn't. And now there's a judgment. So like, what's the problem? The responsible person's like, just pay your debts and move on with life, right? She flat out does not want to do that, right? So now we're like, well, look, there's a foreclosure looming here. What do you want to do? And the attorney's like, well, we actually canceled the auction yesterday because we got your payoff and we knew you were going to pay us off today. And we just went ahead and canceled the auction ahead of time. So actually you have another month. And Josh was like, well, here's what I can do. So this is why I closed with Josh, because he's super creative. He says, Well, if we file a probate, then the money has to be paid to the estate, not to the daughters individually. And then at that point, it's up to the estate to distribute the money to the daughters. And it's the one daughter's responsibility once she receives the money from the estate to pay any debts. But it sort of removes his liability from having to pay this debt for her because he's not giving her personally money. The money is going to the estate, but we have to do a probate, right? So we decide that that's the best route. We talked to the foreclosing attorney. He said, "Look, it's probably gonna. This property in this particular county is gonna take like probably 6 weeks to get probate letters. I know you've extended out auction to next month, so that's 4 weeks away. Would you be willing to then postpone the following month?" And he says, "Well, I think my client might go for that, but what I need from you guys to do is I need you to go ahead and file that probate ASAP. Also, send me a copy of the contract," which we did. And then my attorney kind of vouched for me. And he said, "Look, my buyer here has closed hundreds of deals with me. I have no problem with the performance of him performing on this deal. Like, this deal's going to go through. This is all good. I have no worries about him not performing on this deal. The money's actually sitting in my escrow account right now as we speak, ready to close. So we're all good there." So he said, "Okay, no problem. Let me go back to my client and see if they'd be willing to do that. But I need to know that you guys are actively filing the probate." So we said, "Sure, no problem. We'll get that thing filed like within the next couple days. We just got to go send out these documents, get signatures, whatever." So we do that. We come back to him and we say, "Hey, we filed the probate. The petition's been filed. We even gave the court all the documents they needed so that this could be quick. But we've got to do a publication in the newspaper. We've submitted the publication to them. It won't start until next week, and then it has to run for 4 consecutive weeks before that they'll issue probate letters. So it'll be basically 5 weeks. So that's going to get us past the next auction." He said, "Okay, let me talk to my client and see." So we did all that, and the client, the credit union, agreed to postpone the foreclosure auction for the following month as well because they knew that this probate was pending, and so on and so forth. So we did all that, and ironically, we stayed on the probate court. We were like, "Hey, this is what's going on, da 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 da. Like, there's a foreclosure looming, da 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 da." They were pretty quick, so we did the publication. We got the publication out, and basically the last day the publication had to run was on the 29th of September. That was the final day of notice to creditors period. So we ran that, and then what we did is we called the probate court ahead of time, and we said, "Hey, by the way, the uncle had agreed to be the administrator of his brother's estate." Just kind of be a neutral third party. He agreed to it. So we got him all set up with the documents and whatever. And we said, "Hey, can you," we called the probate court the week before the end of the publication and said, "Can he go ahead and get sworn in as administrator, and you go ahead and kind of get everything. That way you guys can issue letters as soon as the publication is done." And they said, "Sure, no problem." So they actually scheduled him. He was sworn in. They did a Zoom call. He got sworn in before the final day of the notice to creditors. Final deadline was the 29th. And actually on the 30th, they issued the probate letters. They issued the letters of administration on the 30th. We're surprised they did it literally like the day after, which was awesome. Kudos to this probate court for getting these things done ASAP. They did do that. We got the probate letters, and then we immediately called and did a title update. And we'd got an updated payoff, and then within 2 days, we closed the deal. So we closed the deal last week. We got everything closed. We got the letters we needed, the money. We even had to help him set up an estate account. We got the money dispersed to the estate account on Friday. All is good, right? So we got everything closed. And then now, of course, then it gets even better. So we get to the closing table, and I'm like, we had been notifying them, hey, because we were going to do a 2-week temporary occupancy before. And because there were 2 parties involved, the 2 sisters, I actually did a $20,000 escrow holdback, $10,000 a piece for each occupant, just to kind of make sure they had skin in the game. Well, as time passed, the one responsible sister had already moved out. She moved all her stuff out. She found another place to live. All was good. So it was only kind of the irresponsible one living there. She didn't have any money to put a deposit down on a new place. So she was waiting for this closing to be able to go get a new place. So I show up to closing and I'm like, we've been asking her, hey, when are you going to move? When are you going to move? Never got an answer out of her from her. She just wouldn't respond, you know. So anyways, we get to closing, talk to the uncle, and he's like, well, she's asking till the 24th. This was like on the 3rd or something. I'm like, no, absolutely not. I'm not giving you 20 days temporary occupancy. You've had the past 6 weeks to find a place to live. There's no excuse for this. Like, this is ridiculous. She's just being irresponsible as usual. So I finally agreed to do I think we did like a 15 or 16 day temporary occupancy, and I would hold back 10,000. So we adjusted that, and I said, hey, I need, and by the way, mind you, this lady is in her mid 40s, right? And her 60 some odd year uncle is handling all this stuff for her, and he's coordinating her move and all of this stuff. She's just been babied her entire life, and everyone does everything for her. Just like a child in an adult's body here. And I told him, he's like, well, I'm going to be out of town, so that's why there's kind of a delay here, because I've got to help her move. And I'm like, dude, help me help you. Like, I need her out of here ASAP. So however I can help to get her moved, let me know. Like, she's going to get the money here tomorrow. She'll have a deposit tomorrow. As soon as you get your estate account set up, we're going to wire the money, and then you can disperse the funds, so she'll have the money. But I need her out. So now we're dealing with that. Like, we told him, like, you just gotta let us help you, because we'll help. If you need movers, if you need a truck, I'll drive over there with my truck and my trailer to get her out of there. You just need to tell me what. He said, well, I got movers scheduled for tomorrow. They're coming tomorrow. They're going to move 90% of her stuff out. And then we're putting in a storage unit. And then as soon as she finds a place to move into, we'll move, her bed and, the sofa and like her pots and her dishes. She just needs the bare essentials to get her through the next couple weeks. And then as soon as we find her a place, we'll move all the rest of the stuff. So that's where we're at with it now. We're still in the temporary occupancy. We held back 10,000 in escrow. Turns out the uncle's a really cool guy, been super helpful. He was a little standoffish at first, but once he opened up, really cool guy. Actually, probably going to do some real estate deals with him in the future. And hopefully, cross our fingers, we can get her out on time in the next week or so, and we can get this project going. So wanted to share that story. It's pretty wild. It's just some of the crazy stuff we deal with in this business with people, sellers that are irresponsible. And sometimes you're just like you're how old? And this is something like a 14-year-old kid would be doing, or 16-year-old kid would be doing. You're 45 years old. Like, what do you mean? So anyways, wanted to share that story, just some of the crazy probate stories we deal with. Anyways, I'm Brad, the Probate House Guy. Go over to probatehousiguy.com. We've got some courses available over there if you're interested. And I appreciate you watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye.